People like you don't deserve forgiveness. That was the first thing Ethan Walker heard as police cars swarmed his house. Red and blue lights flashing against the quiet suburban street. In just a few seconds, the life of this kind-hearted 19-year-old collapsed. Officers grabbed him, pushed his arms behind his back, and locked cold metal cuffs around his wrists. His mother screamed his name, stumbling after them, her hands trembling as she tried to reach him. But they dragged him away like a criminal. Neighbors peeked through their curtains, whispering like they had been waiting for this moment. Judging eyes, accusing stares. Everyone believed he was a monster. But the truth, the real truth, was only beginning to surface, and justice might arrive far too late. The night Ethan Walker was taken away felt like a nightmare no one could wake up from. But to understand how everything went so wrong, you need to know who he really was before that door slammed shut. Ethan grew up in a small town in Oregon where the loudest sound most days was the train whistle in the distance. He was the kind of boy people described as quiet but good-hearted, always willing to help even when no one asked. He worked part-time at a local hardware store after school, stacking shelves and fixing things for customers who reminded him of his grandparents. He didn't complain about his simple life. He believed hard work would open doors. His father, Michael Walker, was a man of few words, strict, sharp-eyed, a believer that the world showed no mercy to those who weren't strong. His mother, Grace, was the opposite, warm, soft-spoken, someone who cried during commercials about abandoned animals. She always tried to be the bridge between Ethan and his father, even when the rift between them widened over the years. "You have to aim higher," his father would say. "I'm trying, Dad," Ethan always whispered back. Ethan dreamed of getting into a decent college, maybe majoring in education. He liked kids, their honesty, their laughter, their chaos. He believed that being around them helped him stay hopeful about the future, especially when his own future felt uncertain. His mother's best friend, Melissa Jacobs, often relied on Ethan when her babysitter canceled at the last minute. Melissa had 2 kids, Hannah and Jacob, bright, energetic, and always excited when Ethan arrived. He'd help them finish their homework, cook them dinner, and read bedtime stories until their eyes began to flutter shut. Melissa would come home late, thanking him over and over, slipping him a few extra dollars because she insisted he deserved it. Never argued about the pay, not because the money didn't matter, but because helping made him feel needed, useful, good, and maybe because it gave him a chance to see her, Melissa's younger sister, Claire Jacobs. Claire had recently moved back to town after her college classes went online. She was sharp-witted, stubborn, and carried a beauty that seemed completely unaware of itself. Every time Ethan ran into her in the kitchen or saw her leaning on the doorframe with a teasing smirk, his heart beat a little too fast. "You're too nice for your own good, Ethan," she once joked, flicking the brim of his hat before walking away. He replayed that moment more times than he would ever admit. That Ethan had never felt like the main character of anything. But when Claire looked at him like he mattered, even just for a second, he believed he could be. He believed life was just beginning. He never imagined the same house where he laughed with those kids, where he stole shy glances at Claire, would become the place where everything he cared about was torn away. And as the world turned against him, the question lingered like a blade to the throat. How does a good boy become the town's darkest villain overnight? Life might have finally been looking up for Ethan, until the call came that it was early evening when his mom knocked on his bedroom door, her voice a mix of apology and urgency. "Ethan, honey, Melissa's babysitter just canceled last minute. She's already dressed for some charity event she promised to attend. Can you help her out tonight? Just a few hours." Ethan hesitated only because he had a math assignment due Monday. But he saw the worry in his mother's eyes, and maybe, deep down, he also hoped Claire would be there. "Yeah," he said with a small smile. "Of course, it's no problem." The Jacobs house sat on a peaceful cul-de-sac porch, lights glowing warm against the sunset. When Melissa opened the door, she looked like she was stepping onto a red carpet, elegant dress, sparkling earrings, perfume like fresh jasmine. She thanked Ethan at least 5 times before rushing out with a breathless promise. "I'll be back before midnight. You're a lifesaver." The moment the door closed, Hannah and Jacob ran toward Ethan with excited shrieks. "Hide and seek, please." He laughed and agreed, letting them drag him from room to room. They hid behind curtains, under the dining table, and once both somehow squeezed into the same laundry hamper, whispering and giggling so loudly he pretended not to find them right away. For dinner, he warmed up dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Hannah demanded extra ketchup. Jacob swore ketchup was gross and stuck with ranch. They argued, but with soft smiles, siblings in the safest version of childhood. After cleanup, they played a board game, though Hannah kept bending the rules and Jacob kept catching her. "You're cheating." "No, I'm just winning creatively." Their bickering was harmless, normal, comforting. When bedtime finally rolled around, the kids tried every trick to stay awake: bathroom breaks, missing stuffed animals, sudden thirst. Ethan allowed one book each. Hannah chose a story about a cat that traveled the stars. Jacob picked a dinosaur adventure. Ethan read gently, watching their eyes grow heavy. Their breathing slowed. Peace. He tucked them in, turned on their nutty lights, and quietly stepped out. The living room felt unusually still. Ethan flipped through the TV channels until he found a nature documentary. Penguins waddling through snow, nothing exciting, but simple enough to let his mind wander. He thought about Claire, about whether she'd ever see him as more than the nice guy helping with her niece and nephew. He imagined her laughter again, that teasing, warm sound that made his chest feel too tight. He checked the clock. Almost 11 p.m. No text. No sound from upstairs. No surprises, just a quiet night in a quiet house. Nothing strange. Nothing frightening. Absolutely nothing that could have predicted the storm. Waiting on the other side of sunrise. If anyone had walked in at that moment, they would have seen it clearly. Ethan was simply a boy doing a favor, unaware that by morning the world would treat him as a monster. But that quiet night ended the moment sunrise hit the curtains. The pounding on the front door rattled the entire house. Ethan was still half asleep when he heard his mother scream from downstairs. He bolted upright, heart slamming against his ribs. His father opened the door, and suddenly police officers flooded inside, weapons drawn, commands sharp and cold. "Ethan Walker, you are under arrest." Ethan froze. "What? Why?" They didn't let him finish. His arms were yanked behind his back, cuffs snapping tight like a snake bite. His mother's voice cracked into a cry. "There has to be a mistake. He didn't do anything." But the officers barely looked at her. The accusations hit like bullets. They said he had harmed Hannah. They said he had acted inappropriately with her. They said Jacob had seemed afraid. A crime he didn't even understand was suddenly carved into his identity. His father stepped forward, anger or maybe fear flaring in his eyes. "What the hell is going on?" "My son would never," one officer cut him off. "We have a witness. We have statements from the children." Ethan shook his head fiercely. "That's impossible. I would never." His voice broke before the sentence did. Neighbors poured outside, phones in hand, filming the spectacle like a show they paid for, whispering, pointing, judging. In seconds, the town that once waved hello turned into a mob of silent accusations. As they shoved Ethan into the back of the police car, his mother collapsed into his father's arms. His last sight of home was his parents drowning in disbelief. The interrogation room smelled like fear and bleach. Detectives sat across from him, eyes sharp with suspicion, not curiosity. "Why did you touch her? What did you say to make her afraid? Did you threaten the boy to—" Ethan repeated the same words until they felt meaningless. "I didn't do anything, I swear. Please just listen to me." But nobody listened. They kept drilling holes into his story, into his sanity, until he didn't know whether he was speaking or begging. Hours later, he was released on bail. But freedom didn't feel like freedom. The door outside the station opened into a nightmare. Rumors spread faster than truth ever could. People avoided the Walker family home like it was infected. Mothers pulled their kids close when Ethan walked by, fear twisting their faces. His phone lit up with messages, but not the kind he hoped for. "Stay away from us. I can't believe you did that. Don't ever contact me again." His best friend since childhood stopped replying entirely, and worst of all, Claire. She showed up at his house one afternoon, eyes red, lips pressed into a trembling line. "Ethan, tell me they're lying." Her voice was so soft, like she was afraid the truth might kill her. "I didn't do it," he said, stepping closer as if distance were a barrier he could erase. "I would never hurt them. You know me." But she stepped back. "Everyone says you acted weird that night." "Melissa," she said, "Hannah cried after you left. She said you must have done something." Her breath hitched. I don't know what to believe anymore." Those words pierced deeper than any accusation. He reached for her hand, desperate. "Claire, look at me. Please. You know who I am." She looked, and for a moment there was warmth. Then she whispered the sentence that shattered him. "I'm sorry, Ethan. But maybe I never really knew you." She turned away. And just like that, his first love became one more person convinced he was a monster. Even home once a shelter turned suffocating. His father watched him with a stare that dissected him piece by piece. His mother tiptoed around conversations, trying to defend him, but her faith was cracking. One night, after dinner left cold on the table, his father sat across from him. "Just tell me the truth, son." Not angry, not yelling, just defeated. Ethan's chest tightened. I am telling the truth, Dad. I didn't do this. His father closed his eyes, pained. Then why would Melissa say you did? Why would the kids say they were scared? I don't know, Ethan whispered, but I swear to you, I did nothing wrong. Silence heavy, crushing. His father stood up, leaving the room without a single word. The sound of the closing door echoed like a verdict. Night after night, Ethan lay awake, his mind replaying every second of that babysitting shift, searching for anything that could explain this nightmare, but there was nothing. No strange moment, no accident, no crime. Just a boy who helped a family, and lost everything because of it. Whatever innocence he had left was rotting under the weight of the world's hatred, and a terrifying possibility began to creep into his thoughts. What if everyone he loved would rather believe a lie? The days before the trial felt like a slow execution. Ethan barely slept. Nightmares blurred with reality, and every time he woke up, he was reminded that the world still thought he was a monster. His lawyer tried to reassure him. We have your phone records, the camera footage. This is going to help us. But Ethan could see the doubt hidden behind the man's glasses. Hope was a fragile thing. When the trial finally began, the courtroom lights felt harsh, like they were designed to expose every flaw in him. Strangers filled the benches, their faces eager for drama. Not justice. Melissa Jacobs sat at the front, hair pulled back neatly, eyes reddened as if she had cried for days. She wouldn't look at Ethan, and beside her, she looked pale, arms wrapped tightly around herself. When her gaze flickered toward Ethan, it was full of fear, as if he truly was what they said he was. The prosecution wasted no time. They painted a picture of Ethan as someone who manipulated trust, who took advantage of vulnerable children while pretending to be a good person. Their words were sharp, dirty, poisonous. Then they called their star witness. Melissa stepped up, pretending to tremble, her voice cracked perfectly on cue. She swore she had seen something off when she returned home, that Hannah seemed frightened, that Jacob avoided Ethan, that the kids confessed later they were uncomfortable. Lies, all lies. Ethan opened his mouth, but his lawyer placed a hand on his arm. Don't react. They want that. What hurt more than Melissa's performance was watching Claire wipe away tears while believing every word of it. Next came a child psychologist who claimed the children showed signs of trauma, twisting harmless behavior into damning evidence. By the time they finished, the courtroom felt like it had already decided Ethan's fate. His lawyer worked relentlessly to defend him. He showed the timelines, the texts Ethan sent at the exact moment the crime supposedly occurred. He played the door camera footage proving Ethan never left the living room, but the prosecution waved it off. Technology can be manipulated. Cameras have blind spots. Predators hide in plain sight. Every piece of truth was met with suspicion. Every fact turned into a maybe. Finally, it was Ethan's turn. He stood, hands shaking. I did nothing wrong, he began. Hannah and Jacob, they're good kids. We played games. I fed them dinner. I read them stories until they fell asleep. That's all that happened. I swear to you, I would never hurt them. Never. His voice wavered, but every word was honest. The prosecutor stepped closer, eyes cold. If you're innocent, why would a loving mother and two young children be afraid of you? Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't, because there was no answer that would matter. The jury wasn't looking at a boy anymore. They were looking at the villain they had been told to see. Hours later, the verdict came back too fast. Guilty. The word pierced through the air like a bullet. His mother sobbed uncontrollably, collapsing to her knees. His father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched tight like he wanted to believe, but couldn't. The judge's sentence for years in state prison, no. One looked at Ethan as the guards locked cuffs around his wrists again. Not even Claire. As they escorted him away, he turned back one last time, searching for something: hope, forgiveness. A single person who still believed him, but all he saw were faces twisted by fear. All he heard were the echoes of lies spoken like truth. And in that moment, Ethan realized something far worse than losing his freedom. He had lost everyone. The echo of the verdict still haunted Ethan as the prison doors clanged shut behind him. Guilty. That single word clung to his skin like a stain that would never wash off. Prison wasn't just punishment, it was the place where innocence went to die. The moment the guards announced his charges, every pair of eyes turned toward him with hunger, disgust, curiosity. Inmates whispered like jackals scenting blood. That's the kid from the news. Sick freak. He should have rotted outside before stepping in here. Ethan kept his gaze down, shoulders pinned inward, trying to shrink into nothing. But in this place, you couldn't disappear, not when they believed you were a monster. The cell he was thrown into smelled of rust and sweat. His cellmate didn't bother speaking. He simply scoffed, turned his back and left Ethan alone with a thin blanket and a trembling heart. When the lights clicked off, darkness became a living thing. Ethan curled against the wall, palms pressed to his ears, trying to mute the shouting, the laughter, the pounding footsteps. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces twisted with hate. Once, he saw Claire's face to fear replacing the warmth she once gave him. That night, he didn't sleep. The next few weren't any kinder. On his third day, violence arrived with a grin. A tray slammed to the floor, hot food splattered across his shoes, a fist buried itself into his ribs, laughter like knives following him all the way down. Pick it up, creep. Boots kicked him until he tasted blood. Guards watched, amused. When he staggered back to his cell, his lips split open. He pressed his forehead to the wall and whispered through tears, I'm innocent, please. But truth had no place here. Time turned cruel. Letters from home came less and less until they stopped altogether. His mother had tried pleading words scrawled with shaking hands, but silence replaced her hope. His father didn't write at all. Once, Ethan received a family photo, but his face had been ripped away. He stared at the torn edge, feeling his chest collapse inward. Maybe they already erased me, he thought, horror settling in. The violence didn't stop. In the showers, he was shoved into tile hard enough to split his eyebrow. In the yard, a punch cracked his nose. Someone dragged a sharpened toothbrush across his cheek just to watch the blood run. Every attack carved away at who Ethan used to be. When he finally fought back, instinctively throwing a punch, the retaliation came twice as brutal. The guards dragged him off only when they grew bored and tossed him into solitary confinement. There, with no light and no sound, Ethan broke. Curled on the cold floor, arms wrapped around his ribs, he cried in silence, ashamed of the sounds his body made. His mind replayed Claire's voice, maybe I never really knew you. He saw the way his father looked through him like he was already gone. He forced out a whisper so small it barely existed, maybe everyone's better off without me. That thought scared him more than any fist. When he was returned to the general unit, he moved like a ghost. Each night he laid awake, fingers tracing the torn picture hidden in his mattress, wondering why he was still breathing. The idea that he could simply stop, that everything could finally be quiet, slipped into his mind to a Z. But even in the darkest pit, some stubborn part of him refused to die. He didn't know why. Maybe memory, maybe instinct, maybe hope. But one truth held on inside him. If the world wanted to break him completely, it would have to take every last piece he had left, because Ethan, bruised and forgotten, still believed one thing: the truth was worth surviving for. Hope didn't return to Ethan in a loud, dramatic way. It slipped in quietly, the way morning light sneaks into a room that's spent too long in darkness. Almost 2 years into his sentence, a new attorney arrived, a woman named Rachel Carter. She walked into the visitation room with a firm handshake, and eyes that didn't look at him like he was something dirty. I've read everything, she said, sitting down across from him, and something is wrong with this case. Very wrong. Ethan wanted to believe her, but hope was a dangerous thing. People have said that before, he muttered, voice empty. Rachel leaned in. I don't say what I don't mean. She reopened the investigation from scratch, tearing apart every lie that had been carefully stacked against him. The first crack in the story came from the security camera. The original footage used in court was conveniently corrupted, but Rachel tracked down the unaltered backup, which showed Ethan in the living room the entire night, never once going upstairs where the alleged incident happened. Next came the phone records. Precise timestamps placed his phone on the couch, stationary, while he texted his mother at the exact moment Melissa claimed he was committing the crime. Then Rachel interviewed the children properly this time, without leading questions, without fear hanging over them. Jacob admitted that he didn't understand what the adults had wanted him to say back then. Hannah confessed that Melissa told her to pretend because Ethan made Aunt Claire forget her. That was the crack that turned into an explosion. Jealousy. That was the real reason Melissa stood in front of attorneys, shame twisting her expression. She confessed through clenched teeth. She was falling for him. Claire, she talked about him non-stop. I didn't want her to get hurt. I thought, if he was gone, she would stop. Rachel asked her, so you destroyed a man's life because your ego couldn't handle not being the center of attention? Melissa's silence was answer enough. A new trial was granted. The judge reviewed the evidence, this time without theatrics, without lies drowning the truth. It took less than an hour. Case dismissed. All charges vacated. Ethan Walker is fully exonerated. The courtroom erupted, but not with cheers. Just shock, regret, guilt. Ethan didn't smile. He didn't raise his hands in triumph. Freedom felt too heavy, too late. Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder. You're free now, Ethan. Truly free. He nodded, but his eyes were empty. Freedom didn't erase betrayal. He stepped outside to a world that had already moved on without him. The sun felt strange on his skin, like something he no longer deserved. His mother ran toward him first, tears streaming, arms open. He hugged her back, but part of him hesitated, the wound of abandonment still raw. His father approached next, stiff and unsure. I'm sorry, son, he whispered. Ethan wanted those words 2 years ago. Then Claire. She stood a few steps away, shaking. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. I should have believed you. I should have fought for you. Ethan looked at her, the girl he once thought could save his heart, and felt something inside him break again. You didn't, he answered gently, and that's what I can't forget. Her tears fell harder. She reached a trembling hand toward him, but he stepped back. Because victory tasted bitter. When everyone you won for wasn't there to hold you through the war, he was a free man now, a truth finally recognized. But the life stolen from him, the trust, the love, the innocence would never return. Justice came, but far too late to heal what had been destroyed. Freedom felt unfamiliar. The first night Ethan spent outside a prison cell, he lay awake staring at a real ceiling, afraid that if he closed his eyes too long, he'd wake back in the dark. The world was open again, but everywhere he went, people still whispered. He saw recognition in their stares, not Ethan Walker, exonerated, but that guy from the news. Even after the truth came out, rumors clung to him like stubborn shadows. His hometown, once comforting, now felt suffocating. Old friends avoided eye contact. Some crossed the street when they saw him coming. Store owners glanced nervously if he lingered too long. Claire tried to call twice, but Ethan couldn't force himself to answer. Every familiar corner held a memory of betrayal and tenderness that turned to fear. So, one quiet morning, he packed a small duffel bag, the only luggage he owned, and left. No goodbye party, no promises to return, just a bus ride toward somewhere that didn't know his name. He watched his reflection in the window as the town shrank behind him, wondering if pieces of himself were being left with it, or if he had already lost those pieces long ago. He ended up in a coastal city, where the air smelled like salt and new beginnings. He found a small apartment above a bookstore, walls thin but sunlight generous. The landlord, Mr. Harris, an elderly man with kind eyes, didn't ask questions about Ethan's past. Everyone deserves a fresh start, he said simply. Ethan got a job shelving books downstairs. He liked the silence, the routine. Books didn't judge him. Their stories reminded him that life could break a person and still leave space for redemption. Customers came and went without recognizing his face from old news segments, and that anonymity was liberating. One afternoon, while organizing returns, a young woman approached him. She wore a paint-stained jacket and had soft, curious eyes. You dropped this, she said gently, holding out a notebook he didn't realize he'd dropped. Their fingers brushed a fleeting touch, but enough to send a pang of unfamiliar warmth through him. Her name was Lily. She was a local artist who often visited the shop searching for biographies and poetry. She laughed easily, the kind of laugh that made you want to laugh too. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like shrinking away. Over the next weeks, Lily found excuses to talk to him, asking which books he liked, showing him sketches she wasn't sure were good enough, offering to share coffee on break. She never pushed too hard. She never treated him like a headline. When she noticed the thin white scar on his cheek one day, she didn't ask where it came from. She simply said, sometimes the strongest part of a person is the part that survived. Ethan's throat tightened. He wasn't used to kindness without suspicion attached. Healing wasn't linear. There were nights he woke drenched in fear, days when memories clawed back into focus. But slowly, painfully, he learned to breathe without guilt crushing him. He began writing again, filling pages with pieces of what he'd endured, not for revenge, but for release. Words became a bridge between the person he was and the person he still hoped to become. Mr. Harris once found him sitting alone after closing, staring at his trembling hands. You don't have to forgive them, the old man said quietly. Forgive yourself for believing their lies about you. The truth hit deep. Maybe freedom wasn't a place, but a choice. He thought about those who hurt him, those who abandoned him, and for the first time, he didn't feel anger, just distance. The kind that comes with finally stepping out of a storm. On a warm evening, standing by the ocean with Lily beside him, Ethan took a full breath, steady, unafraid. What if the world never sees me as innocent? He asked softly. Lily looked at him, eyes gleaming under the fading sun. Then you live anyway. Because forgiveness, she paused, touching his hand gently, isn't for them, it's for you. The waves crashed softly against the shore, like applause from the universe he had fought so desperately to stay alive in for the first time in so long. Ethan didn't feel like a prisoner of his past. He felt like someone who could finally move forward. Healing didn't erase the scars on Ethan's body or the fractures left inside his heart, but as he stood on the shore with the wind brushing against him, he realized that survival itself was an act of defiance, a quiet victory against the world that once wanted to destroy him. He wasn't just alive, he was living again. His story is a reminder that a single lie can bury the truth, and one accusation can shatter a life. People believe what they want to believe, especially when fear and rumor speak louder than facts. Innocence, in this world, isn't always enough. Sometimes justice comes late, and sometimes it never arrives at all. Ethan learned the hardest lesson of all. Words can be weapons. They can kill a reputation. They can kill a dream. They can kill a person, without ever drawing blood. So before we judge, before we condemn, we must listen, question, and search for truth beyond whispers. And if you're someone like Ethan, someone hurt by lies and left to fight alone, remember this. Forgiveness isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the chains they locked around you. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If you want to hear more real stories that cut deep, challenge judgment, and stay with you long after the video ends, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more voices and more truth into the light.